I'll be talking about how this whole software engineering process has been changed because of hackathons and what is expected out of you. So moving on, I mean, as we all know, hackathon has primarily been the word invented from two things, as we know. The first is hacking in good sense of it. It's ethical hacking, or maybe hacking means solving a problem in a quick time. Some solution to be obtained quickly, and marathon is typically considered to be a long running competition, right? So if you join these together, what is expected is that a diverse team put together their brains to solve some problem in a time box manner, but that time is typically not just few hours like a code jam hackathons or coding hackathons, but for few months where you can actually work together to build something. And that's where this marathon that comes in the way. In a way, marathon is different than a 100-meter competition because you have to continuously put some efforts consistently working on something which a customer require. So that is a real meaning of hackathon. Typically, people have, misconceptualized the overall hackathon essence by just having, say, few hours hackathon, 1 day hackathon, and so on. As long as it is solving a problem, that's fine. But if it is not solving a problem and remains to be an event, then that is not what Smart India Hackathon is all about. Okay. So then what is expected for Smart India Hackathon? And that's where the schedule begins now in the August. And the finale is in December. And the show doesn't end there. It is not about winning the prizes, but about learning on the go, followed by the selected teams or the winning teams would also get chance to implement these ideas, because see, in hackathons typically you can come up with a prototype which is a demonstrable use of the solution, but it may not be perfectly suited for the environment where the customer is going to use it, which means it may further require polishing to make it a sustainable product. And that's exactly the way the ministries are also looking at it. So for ministries, it is like India's problem to be solved by India's students and will be used by the public of India. That's how the Smart India Hackathon overall conceptualization actually begin. So your journey doesn't end in December, but if you are a winning team and the ministries or the corporates decide that you should be implementing that, actually building a workable product, then your journey actually starts beyond the hackathon ends. So this is a bigger journey. Don't consider this to be just one on event. Okay. Typically, this is the premise of the hackathon, and that's where most of the corporates do also at times do multiple hackathons. Of course, there are many versions of hackathons been available nowadays, right? For hiring hackathons to code jams to whatever. But primarily, what the again the essence of hackathon that we are looking at in Smart India Hackathon is about solving the bigger problems for our country. Okay. So you cannot apply the same thinking when you created the problem. That's where this thing is, so that you can actually involve multiple brains to be part of the solution. So in this case, you can imagine. I mean, last year I think there were 10 lakh students participated, out of which actually 4 lakh somehow made their way to the evaluation portal, which is after internal hackathons by institutions. And you can assume that every problem typically gets up to as less as, say, 50 or as big as maybe 900 ideas solution to a given problem based on the popularity of the problem. Then the question is, How? I mean, because we typically select the top 10 out of that 900 ideas that we receive, then your emphasis should be on how can my team be on the selected 10, right? So that you can actually make it to the finale. Because most of us are engineers, and though it has been called software engineering, it's about product engineering. So read the software word as a product engineering lifecycle. Whereas these are the different phases. These are the different phases in the delivery of the product. The first thing first is discovery, which is identifying a problem. And I think more or less we are at this stage as far as Smart India Hackathon is concerned. The problem has been defined clearly. So this probably at the ministry level discovery, the definition has already happened, I would say, where the problem statements actually are listed on the website. But I still don't consider them as a complete definition because they are the problems defined by the customer in their own terms, right? So essentially, I mean, there is a phenomena when you're talking about requirements, there are two parts to it. One, the customer would state what he or she wants, but the outcome, the person who is building a product need to understand all facets of who requires what in terms of the engineering processes. So rather translating the requirements from user requirements to the product requirement is a job which we typically call it as specification or product specification or software specification or hardware specification, right? So this defined thing is yet to happen, or this is where you will start your journey at. The discovery of the problem has already been made. There is slight efforts has been made, maybe 10% effort has been made by the customer to define problems. Now you have to convert that definition of user problem into a definition of a product problem. Okay. Now these green circles, which actually are highlighted here, they make use of the hackathons. Okay. So essentially, it's like hackathon of hackathons, right? So for you, you have to build a product. The discovery has happened, but typically when many of the corporates or ministers, they sit together and do a lot of brainstorming and they come up with even a hackathon among themselves to define the problems. Okay. When you specify the problem as a product engineering requirement, the next step is to develop that. Again, as you know, the development has multiple facets, right? So whether you will be actually using what kind of user experience, but prior to that, when you define your problem, what is more important in any product engineering is to define the persona who are going to use my product. Correct? So if it is ISRO for which you are actually building something, whether it's a junior scientist going to use my thing, or maybe a program manager is using this, or a senior engineer is going to use it, all that need to be defined. I mean, at what level my software actually requires more efforts, or how do I actually divide this product requirement into my user persona so that I can actually define it right and develop the pieces which are required by every persona as a part of the user journey. So that is something which is far more important, that personalized user experience only is possible if you define for whom you're building it. I mean, as simple as say, if you're using a Uber app, right? Has been built for drivers too. So driver typically has their own persona. They have their own user experience. The customer, that is we, if we call for a cab, we have a different user experience. Correct? So there are two different facets. Typically, the customer and the service provider are to be considered when you're building a app or a product that we are talking about. And there can be more than two. I mean, it's just the example which I gave about Uber, but there can be third, which is the overall customer service support. That angle is also been there. So that's the third persona. So you have to think through when you actually read out a problem. And first step is to define user personas. And if you can, I mean, among your team, if you can actually do more of brainstorming exercise, or maybe what you call it as design thinking exercise, just think loud. Maybe you can involve other people as well. Make that a practice that you actually do that far more judiciously, so that you can actually cover the breadth of the problem that we are looking at. Okay. Once you define the user persona, I think what is the next step is to define the specification, that what exactly each persona may require out of this problem. Then defining different user experiences for each of the persona. Correct? Then comes what platforms or what exactly you would wish to use. I mean, the high level architecture of this overall solution, whether the solution has to be on prem, or is it hybrid, is it on cloud, is it app, is it going to be web app, what it would be. If it is a hardware, what exactly it should, how it should be packaged. All that has to be thought through. And what is it then? Once you have a high level architecture, I think the next step would be to actually again put a brainstorming caps, do more of design thinking to identify which technology stack is suited, or which hardware specification is more important. If you're using sensors, which sensors is low cost, which is more precise, all that, I mean, so that you can have a precise product specification at your hand before you approach the problem and before you actually get into a development phase. Right? All this documentation is required when you submit that PPT, right? IDEA PPT, which tells you that, tell us more about the technology stack which is suited, right? So if you have thoroughly identified and compared different technology stacks and come up with one, you would be more confident saying why you have chosen the particular technology stack. Correct? So then comes the develop. Again, when you, as a part of the development, I've already said that the technology choice is one of the biggest step. Then quickly building the prototype, as we typically say, which is functional. Then comes again the user experience, right? So maybe before you actually meet the actual user in the grand finale, or before the mentors are been assigned to you, you can actually act, one of you can act as a one persona and try to evaluate that as if it is a third party tool. So always believe that once the code has been written, it doesn't belong to you, it belongs to a user. And the user has to thoroughly give the review, right? So each one of you can be a user also, wear the user's cap and then try to optimize the experience what you get, and go in cycles before you actually freeze on a workable prototype, which you can then take it to the end customer. Now, whether it is a data centric app, whether the data has been available, or do I need to synthesize the data, which machine learning model should be used, which algorithm is to be used, which tools to be used, all that actually is part of this process, the journey of develop, deliver, and operate. Correct. And you may try different things in this journey before you go and try to optimize it further. So there are a number of cycles, and that's the reason this happens. If you, they are never ending. I mean, it's like you always have to build the product incrementally. Okay. There is always, and that's the reason you might have seen when even many MNCs, right? They keep on improvising their app. When we actually even have Facebook installed on our laptop of mobile phones, we always get updates, right? Because there are more and more security features, there are more and more bugs, more and more features which are user centric based on the feedback of the user are getting added. Correct? So the journey has to be incremental. You cannot just solve one problem at one go. So you have to go through all the phases quickly, build something which you can showcase, get feedback, and try to implement the feedback so that the whole process would become a feedback control system. Okay. So generate feedback, implement, optimize, again, define some more requirements, and keep on doing that till you are satisfied or the person who are giving you the feedback, your mentor, is satisfied. So this is a new definition of product engineering, typically followed in MNCs. Why do these ministries or corporates typically, go through this hackathons? That we need to understand, because unless we understand that, we won't be able to give the justice to it, right? So for corporates or ministries, there are multiple ideas you're trying at very low cost, right? They have given you some um carrot of some winning money, which is maybe 1 lakh for the top team and so on. It's a very less amount of money compared to the effort put by hundreds of teams, right? So they actually get a lot of other, the same idea has been looked upon by at least 1,000 people in different sense. There are at least maybe 50 or 100 teams trying to solve this problem in n different ways, which they are looking at all of these ideas to zero down on, say, top 10 or top 20 ideas, which they can directly talk at the venue in the finale. So they basically, for them, it's a low risk exercise where India's talent is actually putting all their brains. So it's a win-win-win. Smart India Hackathon is like a win-win-win for all. Win for corporates or ministries, which I have just said, that the low cost of failure. Even if none of the idea doesn't really work, we don't get a solution, that's fine. It's pretty low cost for them. For students, it is far more important because they are learning the software engineering hands-on. Or they learning the product engineering, to be precise, very learn by doing ways, right? So you're actually talking to the customer, you are translating right from getting the user requirement, translating those into software, hardware requirements, actually working on the prototype, getting the feedback, getting the mentorship. So for you, it's actually walking the path which makes you industry ready. Correct? That is your win. And of course, institutes would win in the way that their students are getting upskilled through the process, right? So it's a low risk, low cost of failure. It can generate many more ideas, as we have seen in the past with ISRO and other, or even the railway ministry and road ministry. There are a lot more ideas been generated that they act that have been poured into the next year's hackathon as new problem statement. There is a lot of collaboration. In our case, this is another thing which is important to you guys, is use this opportunity to build the network. Firstly, your mentors, your judges, the ministry folks, the corporates which are helping. When you visit the venue for finale, if you get selected, then there are at least 50 plus teams on the venue, which means there are 300 plus students. There are a lot more corporates and ministry people out there. So main thing is to increase the collaboration. Once you have learned software engineering, there are many other way by which you can build your own network. That is a plus as well. Correct? Focuses on quick wins. You have to have a working prototype, which is, of course, I'm not saying right now, but later. So when you are submitting the PPTs, it's not expected, as I said. But even before waiting whether my team will get selected or not, I think that's a good problem that you already have got and you have selected to work on. It's always better to take it as a mini project and solve it. Okay. Try to build some working prototype and play with it. That will give you more learning than anything else. Okay. This is something which is far more important from MNCs, that the product concepts are quickly validated. Not only that, even product management people actually can see something live before that has been tried or invested into new ideas. So every MNC has a budget of product ideas, and if they gets validated before they actually invest, there is much low risk of failure, right? And of course, companies use this to hire the new talent as well. Okay. So there are multiple facets, multiple win-win-win for everyone. There are many flavors of hackathon, which I've just mentioned earlier as well. That code jam, there are data-centric hackathons, there are platform-centric as well. Typically, code gladiators. So there are many. I think many of you must be already participating. Data centric is, I mean, you have been given the data and you have to actually obtain some insights through the data analysis. Platform centric is like every MNC has their own platform, maybe Google Cloud, maybe AWS. Everybody wants their platform to be known to people. So they typically go and conduct these kind of hackathons. But our Smart India hackathon is more a open hackathon challenge where everything is based on experimentation. There are problems which are vastly unknown. Okay. Even though you see those problems defined, they probably been defined by users who are going to use. So you get a raw problem statement most of the times. Of course, they've been reviewed by us, but when they come to you, you probably can ask and generate n ideas, n questions around that. Unknown solutions. You actually get a lot of solutions through this exercise, right? So always having such kind of hackathon, which is a core exercise, rather than jumping into solving some specific problem or looking at specific data or working with specific platform, these kind of hackathons actually add more value to the students who participate. You also build a lot of domain knowledge through this because you are working on some agriculture problem. Maybe you're working on some smart city problem. You're working with, say, ISRO on some astrophysics problem, or maybe healthcare or life sciences related problem. You don't know. So you actually get to know some new domain on which you haven't worked earlier. So it is important in that sense. Now the how to make it successful. I mean, how do you actually should go about it? The first thing and foremost, you might have heard about garage mindset, right? Garage mindset is quickly. I mean, what you need to do is you need to define the KPIs. What I wish to do, as I said, these persona, the features, there are n features each. You can pick up only the most important features, try to implement that design. So go into design thinking, visualize, build UX, identify use cases, go and implement working model, evaluate that, get a quick feedback, and then implement the next level. And keep on doing this. This is a garage mindset, which is about quick fix and then go ahead and get feedback and fix more, right? And this is going to work. If you really want to succeed in hackathons, this is exactly the circle. And if you, this is the same thing which we tried implementing in the finale day. You might have already known from the previous batch otherwise that in grand finale, I think every 8 hours we typically have the evaluation for the same purpose. So what these ministries or corporates who are the problem statement owners, they typically try to evaluate and they suggest some improvements. Correct? Why do they do that? Because every product has to be extendable. I mean, if it is so fixed in design, that particular team doesn't really have ability to improvise it because of the design constraints. So if you can keep your problem if you can keep your solution more open for extensions, and if you know the limitations up beforehand, you can actually work on the improvisation within that 8 hours. So 8 hours, then the first evaluation round is there in the finale. You've been suggested some improvements so that you can check to see, I mean, if you can iterate over and provide the solution to those problems, those improvisations defined. You again have to go through this cycle before you demonstrate that in working. And again, the next 8 hours evaluation would come. So there are total 3 rounds of evaluations in finale for the purpose to see whether your design is extendable or it's too primitive. So while you are building your solution, right, you have to keep in mind that the solution which you are actually picking up has to be extendable. And maybe you can also thought through about what improvisations or what extensions can be possible. And that's the reason that last slide about future progression is far more important in that sense, which is where you can show the ability that you can think through and you can be on customer shoes to actually identify what improvisations that can be suggested to you. So what is expected? I mean, once you have submitted the idea and it gets selected, what is important is your idea is well defined. Suppose your design is well extendable, right? There's a funneling exercise to build a working model, and then you iterate again. So you have a go on various features, right? And then you build a business case again, and you actually get into this exercise. Expected is within 2 days, if you can build something workable, go over multiple iterations before you finalize what all features would go with, whether this design suit, this idea suits, and exactly the exercise you should do now before you submit your idea. In some sense, whether you can build a working model or not, that's fine. But nowadays, with the help of a lot of tools in the market, you actually can do that. But never mind, that is not expected. But you need to actually go through that the idea, solution, and design, are they extendable? Do I need something more? Is the user experience I'm going to give the right way? Uh, do a design thinking, put go no go, and then move ahead and repeat the process before you can actually build the prototype, or you can build a PPT at this stage. Though the prototype is probably can wait beyond the selection. But this is typically a life cycle that is even followed within MNCs, that they go about this within 1 or 2 business days, show quickly something which we call it as a playbook. They run the playbook against the product management. They define, fix the prototype design, and then they take 3 to 8 weeks, which is 2 to 3 sprints of efforts to build a fully functional app. Of course, every sprint there is a demo, so there is a larger cycle which we talked about has to happen. More the feedback, better is the app. Or more the feedback, you can at least fail early and think through and start again, right? So, what are the key deliverables typically expected? Whether you're solving the problem and the problem statement, can you convert your idea to the prototype that has been tested later? But do you have a product vision? Anything that you have sense? I mean, the problem which has been given to you, have you recognized that problem, what it is exactly? Have you worked enough on the use cases or the user journey, and you have noticed all the user problems, why this particular problem has been defined, so that have you worked on all business cases to solve the problem? And all that is actually judged when the PPT is been looked through, where you're mentioning your definition of the understanding and the solution that you're providing. So that has to be very thorough. Somebody has asked in the last um, orientation session that what is important, right? The most important is the impact, right? And this is what I mentioned that day as well. Are you solving the user problem first? Is it helping all the personas that are expected to? How the impact it is creating? Now, is it a business impact? If it is corporate's problem, if it is ministry's impact, if it is addressing all the personas, uh, it is something, the impact is more if it is actually all business cases or any all use cases been considered in the solution. So that is typically measured and the most important thing. The second part is about the novelty of the idea, whether the solution that has been provided is novel or not. Is it a simple solution or is it unnecessarily made complex? Correct? Is it something creative? Some different thought process has been poured in. Correct? So this is more comparative analysis. When different participants typically submit the ideas would get compared against this. So there are two typically. One is a normal method, another is some novel solution, which actually makes the solution far more simple. And that is something when the next important thing. Third, and of course, when required is the technical achievement. I mean, was the problem was very hard to solve, correct? Or the simple problem, or the way the problem has been solved is the solution is simple or unnecessarily made complex, correct? And whether the working demo can be attempted with this technology stack or the technology choice been made, correct? So whether it's a hard problem, whether that feasibility aspect of the problem has given enough thought, are there any limitations of the problem that are mentioned as well? Because at times there are few things may not be feasible at all. So while drafting the problem statement, the minister or the secretariat typically doesn't understand that this problem cannot be solved. But have you typically looked at the problem statement? And because you are the people who are the product engineers, would know that this part is feasible, this part is not feasible, then you should call that out in your idea PPT. That is far more important as well. So that is the technology achievement with the existing technology, which is the best suited technology, and which is also after checking whether the problem is feasible to solve or the problem is not feasible to solve. All that should be called out. And feasibility of building a working prototype through the technology stack that is adopted in future should be important as well. And as I said, the futuristic, then the remaining part, which is about whether the problem is extendable, with the design is simple, all that definitely carries the marks. Okay. So this is how the success, or I would say the evaluation, is typically been measured. So what I'll do is I'll stop sharing now and I will pause for some questions. So I don't know how you're going to ask me questions, but either you can put them into chat or you can just unmute yourself if visible and ask the question. So I hope you have actually understand what is expected out of Smart India Hackathon, which is the open challenge. I hope you have understood how putting more brains together is going to help. You should know that the problem that you're working on, if it is multidisciplinary, but then not only computer engineering students, but you actually should make a team such a way that you will be successful. The skills of the team are far more important. This is not your B project where you would actually go with the friend thing, right? It's always better to get the team which is rightly skilled. For example, there was one problem in the past that I remember is checking and analyzing the cracks in the high-rise building with the help of drone and identifying the structural damages to the building. Now that problem actually required a lot of multidisciplinary team where few people actually came from computer background, maybe IoT experts, the people who can program the drone. Then there are a lot of video analytics which was required, the image analytics which was required, and the structural engineers who can tell whether this particular analysis is right or wrong, right? So there are a lot of teams. So one person may come from computer engineering, one may come from IT, one from electronics, maybe civil, mechanical, and so on. That can make a good team as well. So it depends on the problem statement. you can create the teams. I think Shalaka has the question. Shalaka, can you ask the question? Uh,
Shalaka, you can unmute.
do I have to unmute them? I don't know.
Shalaka can unmute.
Maybe we can go to Dia then. In the meantime, she also has some question, I guess.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I had this doubt, like from yesterday's session, which was regarding choosing the right problem statement. That is the one which we can, correctly mine for the exact issues. So, sir, like in the previous session, it was mentioned that, many of the problem statements have already, solutions that are present in the market. So there isn't much innovation to do with them. And the second one that was mentioned was regarding the statements given in the innovation, student innovation section, wherein, this not a problem, specific statement that is given, but a broad theme. And then
Mm.
the other person evaluator would be free to, have their own evaluation parameters. So my question to you is like, sir, exactly what is it that has to be considered when I am choosing a problem statement? Because like, my team and I, we first, chose one from the agriculture sector, that is agriculture problem of the Kerala farmers. And the
Mm.
second problem statement which we had chosen was, I guess, from health and fitness, that is from this general section, and we worked something on it. But yesterday's session, just we took a step back on that. So could you please share something on that?
Sure, definitely. Basically, if the problem is well known and is already having some solution into market, doesn't matter as long as you're providing some novel and some cost effective solution. Correct. So, for example, I may have a insulin pipe, which is typically used in diabetes, right? Now that insulin pipe is very costly as of now. If you can build some cost effective insulin pipe, that is required. So what I mean is, or maybe a continuous glucose monitoring, which is a costly device for diabetes patients, and that is typically they have to mount that. Either they go for rent, but if somebody of engineering students, again, this is not a problem listed out there. I'm just creating a hypothetical one so that I'll not go. No prejudice has been created, but something like this, if can be built, I mean, the solution exists, correct? But what is the implication? So there are at least 18% or more people are diabetes affected, and which means the market is huge. The cost is heavy. If we can reduce the cost, that will benefit more people out there, right? So the impact would be more. In that case, I can build a cost effective solution, though the solution already exists. So that answers your first question. Whether the problem is known, the solutions, multiple solutions already exist, that's fine. If you want to provide something novel, which is going to be impactful by some feature, I mean, if it is cost, is the question, then cost effective, because you mentioned about agriculture. The cost matters there as well. So if you can provide some cost effective solution, you provide some simple solution to already existing problem. The current solution is say heavy or complicated, unusable, costly. If you can at least answer one of the parameters, then solving the existing problem is not a problem. You can actually go and attempt that as well. Mentioning all these details about comparison of the existing things, because say if you don't mention if the problem solution already exists, correct, then that will go against you. So the examiner should understand that the enough study has been made, the market survey has already been made by the students. They understand that this problem has many solutions already in the market present. And with that knowledge, they have provided something simple and novel solution to that, then that will be acceptable. So there is no point in even discarding that problem. And what was your second part you said?
Sir, those open-ended themes, the student innovation, that is, no problem statement is given. It's just the theme that is provided to us.
Yeah, I think there you have a hell lot of creativity at your disposal. So you can create a problem, correct? But in that case, the most important aspect of open innovation would be, is it going to help the community at large? Correct? If it is in agriculture or in healthcare, then come up with some problem of your own, which is, though it is open-ended, it has to help and solve a particular problem that you see around in community. It should help the community at large. Correct? So if there is a traffic problem and people are not following traffic signals and there is a indiscipline on the roads, what you can do? I mean, is it a solvable problem? Correct? Look at that. Look for the problems which are around you with that particular theme. If it is healthcare, if it is healthcare, like what I said, I mean, it's building something which is already existing, but a cost saving solution. So theme wise, you can decide based on your passion what is suited.
So, like,
But you are,
sir,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt, sir. So, like, if I, for example, choose the field of, let's say, education, and I maybe target a particular, area, or particular community, or some set of people for as a
Mhm.
part of my solution. So, would that also suffice when in the evaluation that process, or is it that I have to, cater to India in general at large?
No, not necessarily. If it should be open then, because it is applicable to Indian students. It can also be applicable to
Yeah.
others. That's fine. That's fine. But yeah, I mean,
Okay.
India-centric problems, definitely. But India plus something is fine. But excluding India doesn't fine. For example, if you are suggesting a parking solution, I mean, there are n such solutions available, which is far more sensor based and all that, with a dedicated parking as it is found in other states. It is of no use for India, correct? But if you can give a solution to parking, for example, on Ferguson College Road in Pune, which is more applicable to our crowd, then that will
Yeah.
definitely be considered. Correct.
Right.
So you have to
Yes,
look
sir. Thank
for the
you.
problems around and more Indian problems, always better. If they apply to
Right.
others, good, not a problem.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Any other
If
question?
if anyone has any questions, they can raise their hands.
So problem definition, like as I said last time, problem definition itself is half problem done. And that's the reason this PPTs would expect you to work on all the use cases. When I say problem definition, problem is been declared on the side, which is very simple, brief, all that. Definition, which is a product definition, product, you're converting that user problem into product engineering problem. That is far more important. Okay, go ahead. Some Utkarsh, you have a question. Go ahead.
Hello, sir. Sir, actually, our problem statement is like monitor to the power grids in rural areas like Odisha and villages of Odisha and etc. etc. So we are monitoring the data. Like we are collecting data through IoT and sensors, and we are just monitoring the data, nothing else. And but to make it unique or to make it a bit useful, we are adding there, like our system is of solar monitoring system, like it will monitor the solar data, solar battery, and all. So in our problem statement, in our solution, we'll add there in our site, we'll add notification alert system and all. And for make it useful to others, we'll add their language, like different languages like Marathi, Hindi, Odia and all. So is it impactful or not? Like problem statement is impactful and solution and all. What's your view on that?
I'm again asking you, what is the problem that you're trying to solve?
Like in rural areas, there are lack of advanced systems and all. And if it's there, it's expensive. So we are targeting a low cost solar monitoring system. We are making a low cost solar monitoring system using sensors and like cheap sensors.
Now, solar monitoring system means what? I mean,
It
there are
will
different facets. So I'm asking, what is exactly that you're working
we are working on like battery percentage and all, like solar is charged or not, and
on?
how much charge it will work. Its efficiency basically.
Okay. So you mean the parameters with which the inverter, solar inverter would get the supply, right? So that it can translate it to DC to AC. Is that a signal percentage that you would be working on? Is it the other aspect of the solar energy that you are working on? Or is it that the angle of the solar panel you will be working on? I mean, what exactly you're measuring?
We are measuring the battery percentage that solar panel will provide us.
No, but that's what I just said. I mean, solar panel can provide less uh, battery life, right? Or less charge if it is actually been not in the right angle, right?
Yeah,
Which is
exactly, sir.
perpendicular to the sun, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
So how would you detect that? Or is it part of this problem statement?
Yeah, we will use the IoT sensors and all, and we will collect the data through IoT on cloud.
Hmm. See, impactful, if it is required, what is required is to measure, then it is fine. But if it is to make it more impactful, then you have to build a rotor-based system or I mean, a, a rotor which has been fitted below with a motor on, which will actually, the panel will move in such a direction that it will be always perpendicular to the sun rays so that it can actually get you more charge all the time, right? Then that will be a better system. And there are such solutions already available in the market. They cost hugely high money. If you can build something which is, say, cost as an extension to the problem which is there, then mention that as well.
Okay, sir. Got it.
Yes. Think about all such aspects when you're actually looking at it. Not just I mean, the problem has been given by the ministry, right? Now they don't know why they are asking. So you'll have to probably read between the lines that why this question has been asked or why this problem is. Is the context enough explained? If not, then can you ask that to yourself? How this is going to help? Who will be benefited if I solve this problem? And what they will do if I measure this? Correct? All that has to be thought through when you put your slide deck or the solution.
Got it, sir.
I
Thank you,
hope.
sir.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, Srija. Yeah, you have to unmute yourself and ask. I think Srija, you have a question. You have raised your hand, but you have to unmute and ask. Can somebody unmute her?
Sir, we have given her the permission.
Okay. Hey, Srija, I think you have to unmute. Unmute yourself and then you can ask. Utkarsh, if it is done, you can lower your hand. Or you have another question, you can go ahead. Oh, I think Srija's question has been answered already. She has lowered the hand. Who else? I hope we have understood what is expected of us from the process, right? The most important is to thought through. Look at the problem, why that problem is mentioned, who has mentioned, who are the personas, how I'll be creating the impact to my solution. Am I answering all these things? Then that is my first step. The second, as I mentioned, is about novelty. Am I bringing something very simple, very different idea, which will save my cost, my time, or my development cost or implementation cost of the ministry or corporate? Novelty factor. Third is about the technology choice. All these things are important. The first thing first, solve the problem. So the first thing first is understand the problem, thought through, and look at the impact. So the impact is important through your solution. Are you building the necessary impact? Are you exceeding the impact, which is probably not mentioned there? Are you reading through the problem and identifying something which is not mentioned there as well, in addition? Then that is important. Are you addressing all the personas who would be affected because of your solution? Most important. Okay. We have last 2 minutes. Any questions more? Because I think we talked about many things. We talked about how this open innovation has actually been put through, how it is win-win. We talked about why MNCs actually do hackathons. Then we have a garage mindset we talked about. We talked about funneling to choose the right technology and idea, right? So that we can build something faster. We can throw something faster and think through all over again. All that, and how to make the design more extendable so that if our idea gets selected, we'll not have problem implementing those extensions on the finale day in that judging rounds. So all that we have to think through when we submit the PPT. And again, most importantly, as I said, the communication. I mean, sorry to say, but the question that you asked, right? I think who asked the question me just before this? So the question that you're asking should be precise enough to yourself. The communication has to be precise. Do practice when you're actually going to the round, which is a selection round, right? At your college level. Practice something like explaining the idea much precisely in just 3 minutes. If you can explain your whole idea in 3 minutes, okay. Firstly, explain the problem statement in 1 minute, explain the idea in 3 minutes, 1 minute for question and answer. So keep things very precise so that the person out there would understand. And you practice this right away because that is the time the ministry or corporates are going to give you in the finale. They typically will stand at your desk for 8 minutes before I mean, 2-3 minutes are a waste, introduction and all that. But primarily, those 5 minutes are far more important to make a mark. Explaining the first problem statement, they already know, so you don't have to. You have to explain the idea in 3 minutes, one maybe question answers, and one drafting all the possibilities of extension that they are talking about. How do you actually perceive that? Because adapting to change is agile, right? So there are multiple ways and assets or other facets of agile that typically people look at. The most important aspect of agile is that the customer is part of the software building process, and that is a must. Even in most of the MNCs do follow that. So when you're building something, first build a playbook, which is more or less possible nowadays with multiple tools, where you can create a UX quickly, the wireframes or a playbook where it actually looks very near to what the end product you will be having. Get a feedback from your mentors before you jump to any technology things. Right? Build a user personas first, the user experience next, then do attempt the technology choices, because the technology choices may change based on the user experience. So think about that as well. So practice this out when you are asking questions, when you are talking to yourself or among your college friends, when you are explaining your idea to somebody. 3 minutes should be good enough. Be very precise, to the point. You should know the limitations of your own idea. You would know how to overcome that if required. You should know what is the extensions possible. You should know if somebody asks you to change the technologies, I mean, one of the technology tools in a stack that you have used, what should be the alternate tool? The technology choice is made only by comparing the technology stacks available in the market or the tools available in the market. So have you done enough study to actually compare? Like Dia has asked, I mean, whether the solution, there are n solutions should be possible in the market already. But are they solving the problem? If they're not solving the problem, what are the limitations they have? What is the limitation that you wish to overcome? What is the impact you are bringing over them? So the third market study of your ideas, your solutions, your technology tools is a must. So do that, and that should reflect in the presentation that you will be submitting. Okay, or even the internal assessment which will happen when your ideas get selected. That is far more important, which shows that you have thoroughly studied the problem well. Okay, so if there are no more questions, maybe we can pause. It doesn't look like people have questions, so maybe thanks a lot. Let's close the session for today then.
Hello,
Is that
Vishal
fine?
sir. It was really great having you as a speaker today. We truly appreciate the time and effort you put in. Thank you so much once again for joining us and sharing your insights.
Thanks, Sundar. Much appreciated. Thank you and bye bye.
Bye, sir.